My dear one, there are moments that arrive so quietly that almost nobody notices them at first, yet they carry a weight that slowly changes everything around them. Last night was one of those moments. Something shifted in complete silence, even if no one has spoken about it, even if this morning looked like every other morning, even if life appeared completely normal. What happened during those unseen hours has already reached the heart of the person you care about so deeply. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may explain things that have been confusing you. Maybe you noticed a different tone in their voice. Maybe their replies felt slower. Maybe their eyes seemed to be looking at you while their thoughts were somewhere else. That feeling is real. You are not imagining it. Some nights leave behind invisible marks that words cannot fully describe. Some hours pass in complete darkness, yet they return carrying emotions powerful enough to reshape feelings that have been hidden for a very long time. Last night, while the world rested in silence, that person found themselves alone with thoughts they had been avoiding for far too long. There was no noise to distract them, no busy schedule, no conversation to cover what was rising inside. Then, without warning, a memory returned. It arrived quietly, but with surprising strength. A feeling they believed they had already buried came back even clearer than before. It demanded attention. It refused to disappear. Keep watching, because this is only the beginning, and what started last night is still unfolding at this very moment. They began remembering conversations they once believed were ordinary. They replayed little moments they had brushed aside as unimportant. Yet now those same memories carried a meaning they could no longer ignore. One small detail, one familiar voice, one gentle smile, one sentence spoken long ago. Everything came back together at once. Suddenly, the night felt completely different. The biggest change did not happen outside of them. Nothing dramatic appeared in front of their eyes. The real change happened inside their heart. For the first time in a very long time, they stopped pretending to themselves. They stopped pushing certain feelings into the background. That is why the atmosphere around them feels different today. Even if they laugh, even if they continue their routine, even if they speak as if everything is fine, something deeper has shifted beneath the surface. Their thoughts carry more weight now. Their emotions feel stronger. Their certainty has been replaced by quiet questions they never expected to ask. Don't scroll away, because the next part may reveal why everything suddenly feels different. When someone finally faces emotions they have hidden from themselves, they wake up changed. Maybe not on the outside, but inside, nothing remains exactly where it used to be. That silent change often becomes the beginning of something much greater than anyone realizes. There was another moment during the night that almost changed everything. For just a second they thought about reaching out. Their hand moved closer than it ever had before. Words formed in their mind that had never been spoken aloud. They imagined breaking the silence they had protected for so long. In the end, they stopped themselves. They closed the message that almost existed. But the feeling behind it never disappeared. In fact, it only became stronger. Now, something inside them refuses to stay quiet. Their heart keeps asking questions their mind can no longer avoid. Why does one person continue returning to their thoughts when everything else fades away? Why does distance suddenly feel heavier than it did only a few days ago? Why have ordinary memories become impossible to forget? These questions followed them into the morning. They are still carrying them right now. That is why today feels unusually heavy. Change rarely arrives all at once. It starts with a single honest thought, then another, then another. Keep watching, because what happened during those silent hours did not end when the sun came up. The night continues through every decision they are making today. Something inside them has already begun moving in a direction they never planned, and they are starting to realize there may be no way to return to the person they were before. Then something unexpected happened. It seemed small at first. Maybe it was a simple word they overheard. Maybe it was someone's face. Maybe it was a familiar place, a song, or an ordinary reminder they never expected to notice. Whatever it was, it unlocked something that had remained closed for a long time. Suddenly, old emotions returned with surprising clarity. Feelings they believed had disappeared proved they had only been sleeping beneath the surface. In that quiet moment, they understood something they had been trying to avoid for far too long. Pretending nothing matters has become far more difficult than admitting that something truly does. That realization changed the way they looked at everything. Their silence now carries a different meaning. It is no longer empty. It is filled with thoughts they are still trying to understand. Every quiet pause now hides a conversation taking place inside their own heart. They may not have spoken yet. They may still appear calm on the outside, but inside, everything feels different. Stay until the very end, because what started in silence is still growing, and the next step could arrive much sooner than anyone expects. Silence is not empty. Sometimes silence is the place where the biggest decisions quietly begin to grow. Stay with me until the end, because the story has not reached its most important moment yet. On the outside, they may seem calm. They may smile, speak normally, and continue their day as if nothing has changed. But inside, they are standing between two powerful paths. One part of them wants life to stay exactly as it has been. The other part knows that after what happened last night, returning to the way things were may no longer be possible. That quiet struggle is much stronger than anyone around them realizes. Some moments arrive only once. Some nights leave behind one clear truth, and sometimes that single truth is enough to change everything that follows. Last night placed one of those truths directly in front of them. They were not prepared for it. They wanted to look away. Yet certain emotions never disappear just because they are ignored. They wait patiently. Then they return with greater strength the moment the heart becomes quiet enough to hear them. Don't scroll away, because what you are sensing right now is only the beginning. The deeper meaning has not fully appeared yet, and every passing hour is bringing them closer to a decision they never expected to face. Even now, while today continues moving forward, they keep repeating possible conversations inside their mind. They are carefully weighing words they have never dared to say. They are imagining futures they once refused to imagine. Quietly, they keep asking themselves whether the silence they protected has truly kept them safe, or whether it has only delayed something that was always meant to happen. The person you care about may not explain any of this right away. They may not even understand why everything feels different inside them. But the difference is real. Real change often begins long before anyone says a single word. Last night did not create brand new emotions. It uncovered feelings that had already been growing beneath the surface for much longer than they realized. That is why today feels unusual. That is why even ordinary moments seem different now. Stay until the end, because what happens next could surprise even them. When a heart changes quietly, the first visible signs often arrive without warning. What they decide after carrying this night inside them may soon become impossible to hide. Every passing hour is gently pushing them towards something they can no longer pretend does not exist, and that silent movement has already begun shaping their next step. They are beginning to notice something they tried not to see before. Even after doing everything possible to move forward with normal life, something unfinished kept returning to their thoughts. No matter how busy they became, that feeling refused to disappear. After last night, it became impossible to ignore. Keep watching, because once someone reaches this point, their next decisions rarely come from habit. They come from what the heart has finally accepted, and hearts do not reach acceptance quickly. It takes many quiet reminders. It takes lonely evenings. It takes unexpected memories. Then one moment suddenly gathers every hidden feeling into a single undeniable truth. That moment has already arrived. This explains why they seem slower today, why they choose their words more carefully, why they pause longer before replying, why silence suddenly feels more comfortable than endless conversation. Deep inside, they keep asking themselves one difficult question. Can what has been hidden really stay hidden much longer? Stay with me, because something important is getting closer. The moment someone begins questioning their own silence, change is usually much nearer than they realize, even if nobody else can see it yet. Even now, they have not found complete peace with everything they discovered inside themselves. One side of them still wants certainty before making any move. They want proof. They want reassurance. They want to know they will not regret opening their heart. Yet another part has grown stronger than ever before. That stronger voice is no longer satisfied with distance or quiet waiting. It was awakened by what happened during those silent hours last night. What comes next may not arrive dramatically. It may begin with something very small. A softer tone of voice. A message that takes longer than usual. A question they suddenly ask. A warmth that was missing before. Tiny signs often appear long before the biggest changes become visible. Don't leave yet, because this story is still unfolding. To everyone around them, they may appear exactly the same, but inside they are no longer standing where they were yesterday. Earlier today, one thought entered their mind with unusual strength. What if the silence has already lasted far too long? Once that question settles deeply inside the heart, it rarely leaves without creating movement. It stays, it grows, and eventually it asks to be answered. There is one more surprising part of all this. As this day continues, it becomes harder and harder for them to return to the emotional place they were in before last night. At first, they believed it was only a passing feeling. They thought it would fade after a little time. Instead, it has become stronger, steadier, and much more difficult to ignore. Don't skip this final part, because this is where everything begins changing in quiet but powerful ways. At one point today, they tried to distract themselves completely. They focused on everyday conversations. They stayed busy with familiar routines. They surrounded themselves with ordinary sounds and ordinary responsibilities, yet none of those distractions were strong enough to quiet what had already awakened inside them. That is because once a thought reaches the heart at exactly the right moment, ordinary life loses its ability to silence it. And what kept returning to them again and again was not an accident. It was not random. It was the truth they had been trying to outrun for much longer than they ever admitted. Now that truth is standing beside them, waiting patiently, and every quiet moment brings them one step closer to finally facing it. It was your presence that kept returning to their mind. But this time, it was more than a simple memory. It carried meaning. That is the part they never expected. Stay with me until the end, because the biggest part of this story is still ahead. For a long time, they convinced themselves that certain emotions were only temporary. They believed those feelings would slowly disappear if they ignored them long enough. But last night quietly changed that belief. It showed them that some emotions do not fade because of silence. They do not disappear because of distance. They do not lose their strength because of hesitation. Instead, they wait. Then they return when the heart is finally ready to listen. That realization stayed with them as the new day began. It followed them like an unfinished sentence they could not complete. Every time they thought they had finally moved beyond it, the feeling returned once again. A small detail suddenly became impossible to ignore. They started comparing how they feel today with how they felt only yesterday, and the difference stood out more clearly than ever before. Before last night, they could still tell themselves that nothing important had changed. Now that explanation no longer feels believable. Don't leave yet, because the next part reveals why this quiet shift matters so much more than anyone realizes. There are rare moments in life when someone suddenly understands that another person has quietly become part of their emotional world without any official decision ever being made. No announcement, no dramatic confession, no carefully planned conversation. Just one clear realization that arrives without warning and changes everything from the inside out. That is exactly where they find themselves now. Because it happened so unexpectedly, they are trying to understand it with great care. Their mind keeps returning to the same questions. Why does one thought keep appearing no matter how busy the day becomes? Why does one person still enter their mind whenever everything becomes quiet? Why do certain memories feel brighter instead of fading into the past? Why has one emotional moment from a single night continued following them throughout the entire day? Stay until the end, because these questions are leading somewhere important. Little by little, the answers are becoming clearer than ever before. Something inside them is finally connecting pieces that never seemed to fit together before. And once someone reaches that kind of inner clarity, the changes people can actually see are usually much closer than anyone expects. There was another quiet moment today that almost nobody else noticed, yet it carried more meaning than it seemed. For a few minutes they imagined what life would feel like if nothing changed from this point forward. They pictured the silence continuing. They imagined saying nothing, pretending nothing had shifted. That thought did not bring comfort. It brought an unexpected feeling of uneasiness. The kind of discomfort that appears when the heart quietly realizes that remaining silent may no longer be easier than finally speaking the truth. That feeling matters because it shows something important has already started changing inside them. Silence is slowly losing the sense of safety it once provided, and when silence no longer feels like protection, honesty begins moving closer. Keep watching because the strongest part is still unfolding. Every passing hour makes it harder for them to ignore what their own heart has already begun accepting. They may not be ready to explain it yet, they may still hesitate, but deep inside they know something is different now, and that quiet awareness continues growing stronger with every moment that passes. Even now they keep replaying certain memories with unusual attention. Small moments they once overlooked suddenly seem filled with meaning. Ordinary words they barely noticed before now stay with them long after the conversation has ended. Familiar memories have become brighter instead of fading away. They are beginning to understand something they never fully understood before. Some memories only reveal their true importance when the heart is finally ready to receive them. That is why today feels emotionally heavier than they expected. They are no longer simply remembering the past. They are finally understanding what those moments truly meant, and understanding has a way of changing everything. Stay with me because this quiet turning point is far more important than it appears. The person you care about may still seem calm to everyone around them. They may continue smiling, talking, and following their normal routine. But beneath that calm surface, something real is moving, slowly, deeply, and in a way that cannot easily be undone. One part of them still wants certainty before taking even a single step. Another part wants a little more time. Yet the strongest part has already accepted that something real was revealed during last night's silence, and pretending otherwise becomes more difficult with every passing hour. That is why their thoughts no longer feel casual. They carry purpose now, and that quiet purpose is leading them toward a future they can no longer ignore. Their thoughts are no longer random. They are careful now, more intentional. They return again and again with quiet determination. Stay with me until the end because something important is still unfolding. When a feeling survives an entire night, follows someone through a full day, and still refuses to disappear, it becomes impossible to call it temporary. That is exactly what they are beginning to understand. Deep inside, they know this realization is changing the way they see the hours ahead. They can feel that something they once delayed may soon ask for an honest response. Not because anyone is forcing them, not because of pressure from the outside, but because the heart cannot stay silent forever when the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Keep watching because one final realization has already started taking shape within them. They are beginning to see that last night may never be remembered as just another ordinary night. It may become the moment they look back on and recognize as the true beginning of change. Some nights do not end when the sun rises. Some nights continue living quietly inside a person until they finally act on what they discovered. This may be one of those nights. And that quiet understanding is slowly becoming impossible for them to push away. What makes everything feel even more serious is that evening is drawing closer once again. With every passing hour, the thoughts they tried so hard to control are becoming clearer, more focused, and much harder to dismiss. Sometimes the second half of the day reveals what the morning could only whisper. That is exactly what is happening now. Don't leave yet, because this part carries one of the deepest emotional changes so far. Earlier, they wondered if what they experienced during the night would slowly fade as daylight filled the hours. They hoped it might lose its strength. But now they know it never did. It stayed with them. It followed every quiet moment, every pause, every ordinary task, every attempt to continue life as usual. That steady return changed everything. Feelings that come back again and again are rarely meaningless. They are quiet signals the heart can no longer overlook. Stay until the end, because this growing awareness is leading somewhere they never expected. Every hour that passes makes it more difficult for them to convince themselves that nothing important has changed. Then another powerful realization quietly appeared. They found themselves comparing today with so many ordinary days that came before it. The same streets, the same routine, the same familiar world around them. Yet something inside refused to return to what it had been. That difference became impossible to ignore. Suddenly they understood why. Last night uncovered a truth they had postponed facing for far too long. Some connections do not become weaker simply because they remain unspoken. Silence may protect certain words for a while, but it cannot erase the feelings those words have always carried. That truth now feels impossible for them to deny. Stay with me, because the next thought quietly changed the direction of everything they were feeling. During one peaceful moment, they imagined hearing your voice without expecting it. They pictured your name suddenly appearing before them. They wondered what they would say if honesty arrived without warning. What surprised them most was how real that moment felt. It did not feel like a distant dream. It felt close, immediate. That kind of imagination usually appears only after the heart has already moved much farther than the mind ever planned to go. There is another reason all of this matters. They are no longer thinking only about what happened last night. Now they are connecting it with many things they ignored before. Tiny moments from earlier days suddenly carry new meaning. Small details they once dismissed now return with surprising importance. A delayed reply, an unfinished conversation, a memory that lingered longer than expected, a feeling they believed would pass but quietly stayed behind. Piece by piece, everything is beginning to fit together, and once hidden pieces finally connect, it becomes very difficult to return to uncertainty. Keep watching, because this quiet unfolding is reaching an even deeper level. Today, they noticed something else that caught them by surprise. Even while trying not to think too deeply, one question continued returning to their mind. What if this feeling was never temporary? What if it has been growing quietly for much longer than they ever realized? What if last night was simply the moment when they could no longer look away? That question has remained with them through every calm moment of the day. The longer they sit with it, the harder it becomes to deny that something genuine has changed deep inside. If these emotions have already grown stronger than they ever admitted, then the answer may have been waiting inside them all along. That quiet question stayed with them far longer than they expected, because somewhere deep within, they already sense the truth is closer than ever before. Don't skip this final part, because this is where silence begins taking on a completely different meaning. They are no longer arguing with their own feelings the way they did before. Yesterday, they resisted every emotional thought that appeared. Today, that resistance is slowly losing its strength. From the outside, this shift may look invisible. To everyone else, they seem exactly the same, but inside it is enormous. A person does not always change through dramatic actions or unforgettable conversations. Sometimes the greatest transformation begins the moment denial becomes too weak to continue. That is exactly where they are now. Stay until the very end, because something meaningful is waiting ahead. When denial slowly fades away, truth naturally becomes louder, and that truth has already started speaking with a clear and steady voice inside their heart. Every quiet moment now brings them closer to accepting what they have tried for so long not to admit, and once that acceptance is complete, the next step often arrives sooner than anyone expects. They are slowly accepting that last night was not just an emotional moment that happened by chance. It became a night of discovery. A quiet experience where hidden feelings rose to the surface without asking for permission and refused to disappear. That is why they can no longer return completely to the emotional distance they once felt comfortable with. That distance does not feel natural anymore. It feels uncertain. And when distance begins to feel uncertain, the possibility of closeness quietly starts to grow. Stay with me until the end, because another important realization has appeared. They are beginning to wonder if the next step always has to be something dramatic. For the first time, they are realizing that real change may begin in the simplest ways. A softer voice, a warmer reply, a small act of kindness, a different kind of attention. These are often the first signs that someone has changed deeply inside long before anyone else notices it. Don't leave yet, because this matters far more than it seems. The person you care about may still feel hesitant, but that hesitation no longer stands alone. It now exists beside growing understanding. And once true understanding is born, it rarely disappears, especially when it was shaped by a night powerful enough to make the entire following day feel emotionally different. That night is still speaking quietly inside them, and what they choose to do next may arrive much sooner than even they expected. Now the most surprising part begins. As this day moves toward its final hours, what they are feeling is no longer only reflection, it is slowly becoming direction. A person can spend many hours questioning their emotions. They can replay memories again and again. But eventually there comes a moment when endless questions begin turning into quiet decisions. That moment may already be taking shape inside them. Stay until the end, because this next part carries the deepest emotional shift so far. Throughout the day, they kept wondering whether last night was simply an intense emotional experience or something that would remain with them much longer. Now, after every returning memory, every thoughtful pause, and every silence that felt heavier than usual, one truth has become impossible for them to deny. What happened last night did not become weaker in the daylight. It became clearer. That is what surprised them the most. Many emotions disappear with the morning. The strongest ones become easier to recognize. They no longer hide behind distraction. They stand quietly in the light, asking to be acknowledged. That is exactly what is happening now, and the more they notice it, the less they are able to return to the way they felt before. As evening continues to draw closer, they are carrying a quiet awareness they never expected to hold for this long. Life around them keeps moving as usual. People continue their routines, conversations continue. The world seems unchanged, yet inside they know something is no longer standing where it once stood. They may not be able to explain every feeling with perfect words, but they can clearly sense the difference, and that difference matters. When someone recognizes an inner change this clearly, they naturally begin looking toward the future in a different way.